Hi, everybody. Welcome to Christian Homestead. Let me know that you can hear me, that the audio and visual, everything's working. Also, let me know where you're from, and let's go ahead and let's share notes from this session of General Conference, the Sunday morning session. Now we just have one more to go. And I know we're all looking forward to it because we all want to know which temples are going to be announced. We want to hear President Oaks speak. But let's talk about this Sunday morning session. And I think it was pretty good. There was a lot more mention of the second coming in this session. And of course, this channel is primarily focused on the second coming. So this is not meant to be a comprehensive review of General Conference. And also make sure that you actually watch General Conference. Don't just watch these live streams or videos or those of another channel in lieu of General Conference itself. Let's see, Miguel Alarcon, Mexico City. I can hear you. All right, good. Official Jaw the Forest YT in Salt Lake City for the afternoon session. Oh, great. So you're going to be there to hear President Oaks' first talk, not as president of the church yet, but since the passing of President Nelson. So that's going to be interesting. Now, did I understand correctly, you guys, from yesterday, when President Oaks first addressed the church, he said something to the effect that he would be speaking in place of President Nelson. Is that what he said, or something like that? You know, President Nelson, I wouldn't be surprised that he had a talk already written. What do you remember from yesterday, from what President Oaks said about speaking? Let's see. Sasha Jorgensen, everything great on my end. Lisa Woodbury Jensen, Kodiak, Alaska. Sasha Jorgensen, Riverton, Utah. Let's see, September Benzia, I subbed to the new channel, Walk with Christ. Yeah, while we're waiting for people to join, I always like to give it a little bit of time. Let's go ahead and take a look really quick at my friend Cabria White's channel, Walk with Jesus. Just really quick, here's the description. Hello, my name is Cabria White. Join us as we watch faithfully for the return of Jesus Christ, tackling signs and wonders, gospel questions, and miracles in our everyday lives. Will you walk with Jesus too? So please make sure to subscribe to her. I've already vetted her. She's been watching my channel for years now. Always leaves really good comments. She's super enthusiastic about the second coming. So I'm pretty sure that if you like my channel, you'll like hers as well. So maybe take a second really quick and subscribe to her channel. I'll put the link for her channel. Oh, I got to go to another window. I'll put the link for her channel in the chat. And I'll also put it in the description box of this video if you're watching this after the fact. So make sure to subscribe to her. Okay, let me see. Nate says, yes, he said that. Official Jaw the Force YT says something like that. I think Nelson might have a secret message. Amy Laria says, conference has been so good, watching from Alabama. September Benzia, Oaks is speaking last in place of the late president. Yeah, so I guess what I'm wondering is, does that mean that he's going to read President Nelson's last talk that he had prepared for this general conference, or is it just that in the current state of church leadership with this apostolic interregnum, is it just simply he's going to be speaking in the spot where the prophet would normally speak? That's what I'm wondering. But I don't think he really clarified that. Wait, Timberly, excuse me, says Timberly Gregory says he said he would read the words President Nelson has prepared. Okay, gosh, I wish I had a perfect memory. I could pay attention to all the things. It's kind of hard. Okay, so where do we want to start here? Before I get into the notes, I just want to point out a couple things. I was not really tracking this until this morning. So we're looking at X. This is Jonathan Shancer. And he says, all the experts, oh my gosh, all the experts called it a failure. Turns out Israel's September 9th strike on Hamas in the heart of Doha scared the region straight. The Israeli message to Hamas sponsor Qatar and the rest of the Gulf: end this, or war comes to you. So I had already felt like it was significant when Israel decided to do that, simply because it happened on President Nelson's 101st birthday. And on that same day, in addition to what happened in Qatar, you had this thing between Poland and Russia. That Poland officially became the first NATO member to fire a shot during the Ukraine war by downing Russian drones that were entering into its airspace. The day after that, we had that event that took place in Utah Valley, at Utah Valley University. On that same day, September 10th, there was an unusually deep earthquake near Vernal, Utah, that originated not in the crust, but in Earth's mantle. So those don't happen very often. But anyway, back to Qatar. What's interesting is that happened on President Nelson's 101st birthday, and at least according to Jonathan Shanser, and I trust that this is right, it seems like that led to what could potentially happen today. This is Politico. I'll just read the highlight right here. President Donald Trump on Friday set a Sunday deadline for Hamas to respond to his 20-point Gaza peace proposal, threatening that they would face the consequences like no one else has ever seen before if they reject the offer. So I looked it up, and the deadline is 6 p.m. Eastern time today. So interesting day for that to happen, right? Of course, they may accept that proposal, in which case the hostages would be released. Or if they don't accept it, then I guess we'll see if Israel, with the backing of the U.S., makes good on what they plan to do otherwise. So I just think that's super, super, super interesting. Is the war, is it going to come to a close today? Or is today going to be like the key event that ends the war? Is that what's going to happen? On this general conference of all general conferences, when we're having a transition from President Nelson to President Oaks, along with this unusual thing with the rain and flooding in Salt Lake City. It's been both Tooele as well as Salt Lake City. But in case you missed the last time that we talked about this, I think it was the last video or live stream. This is how President Nelson and President Oaks' apostleship began. Just before they became apostles in 1984, in 1983, there was this unusual flooding event. We're looking at KSL.com, looking back at the 1983 flood that sent a river through downtown. That's a very unusual, very rare thing. As far as I know, it's the only time that that's happened in Salt Lake City. They created bridges to go over this river that ran down State Street. I just made a video here at the Eagle Gate when I was in Utah. That's going to come out soon on my new channel, Explore Church Sites. But, it has pictures of all the stuff, all the flooding and stuff in that year. And look at this. Look how close it got to the Salt Lake Temple. So this was in between the deaths of LeGrand Richards and Mark E. Peterson. Those two died exactly 1 year apart on January 11th, 1983 and January 11th, 1984. Those spots were filled by President Nelson and President Oaks, and you had this flooding in Salt Lake. Well, now, as we're going from President Nelson to President Oaks, there's flooding again in Salt Lake City itself. Not at the temple, but I covered some other things in the last video, but this is new. This is the newest update. This is KMYU, my Utah. Salt Lake City records highest rain totals in more than 120 years. Now, this, back in 1983, this was a result of spring runoff or like the quick melting of snow and ice in the mountains. This is a result of rain, but it's the highest on record in 120 years. A Salt Lake City neighborhood is dealing with rising floodwaters after record setting rains overwhelmed local drainage systems. Saturday was the wettest day in Salt Lake City since 1901, with rain totals reaching 2.43 inches over the course of 24 hours. The most rain recorded in Salt Lake City was on May 3rd, 1901, with a total of 2.64 inches. Multiple homes reported basement flooding, and city officials are working to prevent further damage. So, just want to put that on your radar. We have this happening in Salt Lake City as we're having this general conference, and as we think about what happened back in 1983. That's really interesting. And then we have this 6 p.m. Eastern Time deadline for Hamas to release the hostages. From just kind of what I've seen, it seems like they may actually do it, but it may just be rumor. Who knows? So, and then we have all these things that have taken place in September. We have what happened in Michigan the day after President Nelson passed away, and just something very interesting, something very odd is happening, I would say. In fact, that's a pretty good segue to looking at my notes for General Conference. We're going to start with Elder Jeffrey R. Holland's talk. He talked mostly about how the Lord does things in his own way. He chooses his own instruments, and there's so many times that people, expect God to do things in a certain way. And usually it's miraculous, spectacular. And this is something that I talk about all the time on the channel, because a lot of what Jeffrey R. Holland said in his talk, I feel like it could apply to signs of the times as well. He was mostly focusing on the way that the Lord answers prayers and the way that he runs his church. But I feel like the same thing holds true for signs of the times. Now and then you'll get pushback on certain ideas, like what we just talked about with the flooding. Undoubtedly, there's people that think, oh, that's nothing. It's not any big deal. It's because they expect things to be magical, spectacular, cinematic, so on and so forth. And there's one thing in particular that Elder Holland said that I really liked how he worded this. He was saying this in regards to receiving answers from prayer or answers to prayers, I think, if I remember right, but I feel like this applies to signs of the times. He said, it may not always be clear what is being done and why. And that's how I feel about all this right here. There is so much going on right now in September and now October, and specifically during General Conference. I feel like it's clear, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, something is going on, and we may not know exactly what it is, but we don't necessarily have to know 100% exactly what's going on. But we can get a sense of it. We can get a sense that this is a significant time, and maybe that's all that it is. Maybe just the Lord wants to call our attention to the fact that, we're now moving into a new phase, a significant phase under President Oak's leadership. I don't know, but I don't need to know 100%. All I need to know is that something unusual is going on, and it can't be coincidence. I really don't think that it is. Okay, before I continue, let me look at the chat. Deb Cahill says, I feel this session is about how we are all important, how we are basically needed to become his covenant people, and we all can do our part, serve and help each other. Yeah, there has been a lot of that everyone's important, everybody's needed. Yeah, I agree. The Haystack says, I loved Elder Holland's talk. I loved them all, especially his. Yeah, his was very good. Let's see. Let's see. Sorry, I'm going to skip down. Woodcraft Supplies Corner, or the beginning of the transition into more turmoil, which I kind of felt has the undertone or was the undertone of this morning session. It felt to me that they were saying it's going to get hard, but maybe that's just me. Yeah, it could be. I wouldn't be surprised if things just get harder as time goes on, as we get closer and closer to the second coming. Uh, that's kind of how things started out this year. There were a lot of messages about um, trusting in the Savior and getting through trials and tribulation and so forth. It was earlier this year that my friend Caitlin, with Anticipating Christ's Return, there was one day that her husband lost his job, and on that same day, the church had posted something on like Facebook. It was a post about Christ walking on the water. You know, the apostles were in the boat, and there was a storm, and the sea was turbulent. Um, and it was perfect timing. I sent that to her, and she did feel good and comforted by seeing that. But there were a lot of messages earlier this year that were like that, and I feel like it goes along with this, especially Elder Eyring's talk. He was talking about refinement and let's see how the Lord will prove us in our lives, in the purposes to strengthen us. And also, there was one part where he said something to the effect that the testing that we go through in this life is to see if we can be trusted. I think that's something that not everybody really thinks about in the church, but maybe the majority of people, but I feel like there's so many in the church that still have like these other Christian ideas, like from other Christian denominations outside of our church. If you were to, summarize it, it seems like most of Christianity believes that we're here, we were created, and we're supposed to choose Jesus Christ and be good. And then afterwards, you either get reward or punishment. And like, that's the point. They don't, as far as I can tell, I've never seen a very satisfying explanation as to the actual purpose of our creation outside of our church in the rest of Christianity. I've never seen them explain why we're created in God's image or what our purpose is after this life. It seems like they just believe we are creatures, like basically like animals created in the image of God for some reason, in that we're supposed to be good and believe in Jesus Christ, and then you're either rewarded or you're punished for eternity, and that is it. Oh, and on top of that, if you're rewarded, if you go to heaven, you become a sexless angel, without gender, and then whatever. In our church, yes, there is reward and there's punishment, but it's more profound and deeper than just that. We're not just creatures of God. We're not just animals that he created. We are the same species as God. But our purpose is to become like him and do exactly what he's doing. But not everybody can be allowed to do that. You have to be trusted with that much power. So in this life, immortality, just any person can, procreate and have children. And I feel like there's a big lesson in that, because we see how some people are with their children. Some people neglect their children. Some people abandon their children. Some people abuse, and some people, not everybody, in essence, not everybody should be a parent. They're allowed to be in this life. The Lord has ordained that. Like, that's one of the purposes of this life. But in the eternities, becoming a God and having just infinite power over your creations, you have to be trustworthy. You can't abandon your children in eternity. You can't abuse them. You can't neglect them. You have to be perfect, right? And so it is a reward, but it's a work. It's the work of eternity. It's the priesthood. It's a man and woman coming together, forming a eternal system, and helping to maintain, this reality, essentially. So anyway, Elder Eyring, he talked about that we're being tested right now to see if we can be trusted. It's not just, are you good or bad, and then you're gonna get a punishment and a reward. He's trying to find out if we can be trusted. It's a refining process. And he said, the Lord is shaping us through these trials so that we can be able to stand with him in glory. So in other words, so that we're worthy, able, so that we're trusted to be like him and carry on the work that he's doing in eternity. While we're here, let's see. I liked what Elder Holland said about prayers, that sometimes answers come in plain ways, or sometimes they come in convoluted ways. He said, so what if answers come in plain ways or convoluted ways? That's another thing that I think it relates to the second coming and signs of the second coming. That, again, like we have these preconceptions of what prophecy is supposed to look like or what signs of the times are supposed to look like. But what if they come in plain ways? Like this right here. You might think that this flooding in this neighborhood in Salt Lake City is just like, oh, that's nothing. It's just plain. That's just bad. Well, the reason why it stands out is because it broke a record. This was also part of a 100-year storm. At least in Tooele, it was considered a 100-year storm. But some people would look at this and be like, oh, this is plain. It's not cinematic enough. There's not enough destruction. And so we can just disregard this. But I think that would be a mistake. I think if you're watching this, you probably agree with me that this is significant, that this is happening during General Conference. And then, you have plain, but you also have convoluted, right? What does convoluted mean? It basically means like complicated, or I think sometimes maybe overcomplicated. Let me just double check. Convoluted. Let's see, especially of an argument story, extremely complex and difficult to follow. There it is. Extremely complex and difficult to follow. That's another thing that people don't like because it takes effort, it takes work. There's a lot of people that think that these spreadsheets are a waste of time, that they're convoluted and complex, and they are. And maybe they are hard to follow. But Elder Holland just said, so what if prayers, and I think also you could include signs or anything that God does, what if what God does is plain or convoluted? So what? It doesn't mean that it's not coming from him. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have a purpose. Okay, let me look at the chat. Borky Baby says, my mind never goes to the seals, but President Nelson's 7 pattern. Last night, my mind keeps going to the 7th seal. It's so weird to me to feel that. Yeah, well, let's take a detour and talk about that. Let's go to quotes A through Z. I don't know if you've seen this before in one of my videos, but I've noted that there's been a shift in talking about Earth's history. We know that the seals from the book of Revelation, each one corresponds to a 1,000-year period of Earth's history. But only recently, like relatively recently, have we been getting statements saying that we're past 6,000 years. So for example, we have this one. This is President Nelson, a worldwide devotional for young adults, May 15th, 2022. The name of the talk is Choices for Eternity. And he said, Heavenly Father has sent his children to earth for more than 6 millennia. So more than 6,000 years. We have this one from President Oaks. This is Celebrating Christmas, First Presidency Christmas Devotional, December 8th, 2024. Over 1 billion people will celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ during this Christmas season. The whole world should do so. Even in worldly terms, Jesus of Nazareth is the most important person who ever lived. He is the principal subject of prophets and poets for over 6,000 years. Over. And I'm not going to do it right now. I also have my other spreadsheet for phrases from General Conference, but in the video that I did about this, this kind of language has not been used until recently, over 6,000 years. In fact, until recently, they would say things like it's nearly been 6,000 years. So it seems like there's been a shift in talking about 1,000-year periods. Okay, let's go back to my notes. Let's see. Gail Denkers, isn't it supposed to be a solemn assembly conducted in order to sustain a new prophet? Yeah, so I suppose what would happen is maybe the next General Conference will have the formal solemn assembly where President Oaks would be sustained by the church, I think. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? Borky Baby, not spiritually ready. Been a grind. So that's why my heart is failing me in the calamity, frowny face. But little bits of holding on through spiritual content helps. So thanks, Jared. Yeah, well, hang on there. Just keep working at it. There's been a lot of words of encouragement, I think, during this General Conference, for situations just like yours. I don't know your exact situation, but just hang on there and do the best that you can. President Nelson has said in the past that the Lord loves effort, and there is a difference between like having weaknesses and struggling and active rebellion. Those are like two different things. You could be doing the same thing, like the same sin, but the reason why you're doing it is either because of weakness, not that you want to do it, you know that it's wrong, you wish you were different. That's different than, oh, I don't care, I'm just going to do it, and who's going to tell me that I'm wrong, or I know that it's wrong, but I'm still going to do it. So there's like a difference between those two things. The Lord loves effort. Mike Newberry, with all the sad events lately, the conference has been very peace-filled with the soothing spirit of God. My eyes have been wet multiple times already while listening. Yeah, I would totally agree. It's been peaceful. I'd say it's been joyful. I pointed out last night, I feel like I've seen President Oaks smile more than I've ever seen him smile. Of course, maybe I just was never paying attention, but I feel like he's been doing a lot of smiling, and I think it's good. Okay. Borky Baby helps me move the battlefield like a smidge, so thanks. Goblin 2004. My mother-in-law lives in Tooele, and she said that they didn't have any flooding where they live. Well, good. I'm glad. Can anybody speak to the storm yesterday? Because last time we talked about this, a lot of people were saying that just the lightning was really crazy and it was a really strong storm. We also saw posts about that on X. Amy Luria says, something is definitely going on. There was a mass... Okay, so there was something that happened last night in Montgomery, Alabama. Sadly... Okay, so yeah, there was something that happened yesterday. And I guess it just goes along with everything that we're seeing. Woodcraft Supply Corner. They were begging us to hold on, not walk away, respond correctly, and endure well, because they promise it will be worth it. Just my take. Yeah. And maybe part of that is because things are getting more difficult. The world's becoming more divided. We've talked about how there's been all these kind of like dividing events where, something happens, and then if you're kind of like extreme in your views, you're pulled one way or the other. A great example of that is what happened the day after President Nelson's birthday. That was a really divisive event. You'd think that it'd be a unifying event across party lines, and maybe for some people it was. I know that there were some people that had an opposing political point of view that did mourn what happened and didn't think that it was good. But then you have other people where this just like made the divide even bigger. So, and there's been like a string of divisive events lately. And so maybe they're just, maybe the Lord is really worried about people and wanting to make sure that they don't walk away and that they are able to weather these storms. Um, B. Joel's Garden, 6 p.m. Eastern is 4 p.m. Mountain Time. The end of this conference. Interesting timing. Yeah, in case you're just joining, uh, B goals is referring to this deadline that Trump gave to Hamas that and for some reason, just across everything that I read, it seems like they're actually going to act on that. It may actually happen today, but but Hamas has to accept this deal by 6 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, as conference is ending. So I may do a live stream after conference. I'm going to just have to feel it out. Either way, if something happens, I'll definitely report on it and give my opinion. Let's see. Uh, Ava Nielsen says Elder Holland said he looks forward to huddling in Jerusalem with his friend. What can we gather from that? Yeah, I actually had that same thought. I don't know if he was just meaning like, we're in the same boat, or if he was meaning we'll see you soon, I don't know. Allison Jane, if I'm pronouncing that right, says, I like how Elder Holland said his views should matter because of his age and who he has met with, kings and prophets and dignitaries. Yeah. Woodcraft Supply Corner, couldn't we sustain the new prophet in our own assemblies at sacrament or ward council or state council? Does it have to be general conference? Well, as far as like having a solemn assembly, I think that's only done during general conference, and we sustain, all church leadership every conference. Well, do we do it every? Oh my gosh, why can't I just? Or is it every April? There's the sustaining. So, yeah, sorry, I don't really know exactly how it's going to play out. My best guess is that there's going to be a formal solemn assembly next April, but I could be wrong. KCL says, I'm interested in your opinions about Elder Holland's talk and what he said about Jerusalem and the last days / second coming. I may have missed some of the talk. I don't know. Whenever I'm trying to take notes, it's always like the words are coming fast and it's hard to get everything down. Yeah, sorry, I don't really have any. I guess I don't really have any notes on that. I do want to point out the opening prayer, which I can't remember who said that, but he mentioned the rising generation and preparing for the return of Jesus Christ. Elder Peter M. Johnson of the 70, he started out by quoting President Nelson's October 2024 General Conference talk, where he said, now is the time to prepare for the second coming. Let's see. Received a testimony of the gospel in that the church is necessary. Oh, yeah. So he had an issue with blacks in the priesthood because Elder Johnson is black, and there was a time when he struggled with that. It hurt his testimony, but then he ended up receiving his testimony and conversion and realized that, the church is necessary to prepare for his second coming. There was definitely more second coming talk this conference. Elder Suarez at the very end of his talk, it wasn't one of the main points, but he did mention the second coming. Andrea Munoz Spinaus, she said following the prophet is crucial in the lead up to the second coming. Let's see, while we're looking at her notes, she said when Christ came to the Nephites, he called 12 apostles. And this is one of those things that's always been in the back of my mind. In the Book of Mormon, it simply refers to them as disciples. It doesn't use the word apostle. I think sometimes people mix those two words up. A disciple is simply someone that follows Christ, right? We're all trying to be disciples of Jesus Christ. But an apostle is a priesthood office. Just like how you have, deacons, teachers, priests, bishops, elders, high priests, patriarchs, 70s. apostles. Apostle is a priesthood office. And I always assumed, kind of, even though I don't think it's officially been said, that those 12 Nephites probably had the office of apostle, but I was never really sure. And so when she referred to them as apostles, I don't know. I might have to look into this further, but I'm probably going to save that quote. It would make sense that they would have the office of apostle, but I don't know. Feel free to share your thoughts on that. She also said, because basically her talk was about prophets. She pointed out that the Lord will yet reveal many things through his prophets. She was quoting, I can't remember what, but I think something from Joseph Smith. The Lord will yet reveal many things through his prophets. So, I mean, just be prepared for that. Whenever new things are revealed, you always have people that struggle with it. But that's part of this church. We don't have everything. We have everything that's necessary for exaltation, but we don't have everything. The church is going to continue to change. And then she also mentioned that prophets help prepare us for calamities. So, when we think about calamities nowadays, this being the last days, we think about the last days and the second coming. And then we have Cabria here with Walk with Jesus channel. If you didn't catch it, Cabria, I mentioned you earlier in the live stream, first thing. Everybody make sure to check out Walk with Jesus. She just started her channel. She's been watching this channel, my channel, for a long time, for years. She has good comments, and if you like my stuff, I think that you'll like hers. So right now she's at 195. So 5 more people subscribe right away, and let's get her to 100. She's off to a really good start. So this is Cabria White. She's from Arizona, and she has had the courage to start a new channel. I'll put a link for her channel one more time in the chat. And then I should have done this earlier, but I'll put it in the description box as well. But it's not in there right now. Okay, there's the link. Okay, she says, I was very fascinated by Holland's Jerusalem blurb. It seemed very 3 witnesses to me. The wording was too specific. Okay, so I'm starting to feel now that was a thing. I wasn't really sure. I heard it, and then my mind instantly thought, oh, is he just talking about oh, we'll see you soon, brother, I'll see you on the other side of the veil? Or, gosh, I want to go back and get that exact wording. This is one of those things I'm going to have to follow up on. Can anybody else speak to that? Is that what you heard as well? I'm looking at the chat here. Amy Luria, in talking about sustaining new prophets, she says we also sustain in state conferences. Yeah, that's true. Borky Baby, Book of Mormon people fell from being ites, quote unquote, and being divided from Christ. Keep studying the Book of Mormon. It tells us what to do. Charity. Look up the definition. Live with charity, and we will not fail. Yeah, and also, that's a good segue to Elder Suarez's talk, which it seemed like his talk was about temperance. Temperance is something that's really, really needed right now. In fact, I looked up the definition of temperance. It's moderation in action, thought, or feeling. I should have read the rest of this, but yeah, it's basically the opposite of being extreme. It's being moderate, restrained, watching your thoughts, your actions, your behaviors. And this is a Christ-like attribute. And we have to remember this when we have these extreme events that can divide. Too many people are given to their natural man and knee-jerk reactions and fear. A lot of people I'd say especially like on the right, mostly of the political spectrum, a lot are, if they're not careful, a lot are given to fear and paranoia, and it can get really bad to where, I mean, it happens on both sides, I guess, but I feel like I've seen a lot. Okay, I'm just gonna move on. I don't want to like cause contention in this live stream. Um, he said to avoid impulsiveness, so that's kind of like what we're talking about when we're talking about knee-jerk reactions, not thinking things through, not being tactful, not thinking first about how would Christ address this issue, in what way would he do it. He pointed out that we want to avoid being aggressive, impatient, arrogant. These things are the enemy's trap. And it really is. I feel like too many people have fallen into this trap, especially when it comes to politics, but it can be other things too. Um, he points out, this was a quote from somebody, I can't remember who, but the measure of a man does not come from when he's in comfort, in safety, but when things are rough. This is something that I talked a lot about back in 2023 because that was a really rough year for me. And I had a lot of anger at different things that were going on in my life. It just felt like everything was going wrong. And I had a lot of insights in that year that were along these lines, how it's a test. I talked a lot in that year about 2020 and how the year 2020, it seems like that was a test for a lot of people. A lot of us were uncomfortable. It was a rough situation. There was a lot of friction. There were a lot of opinions. And how did we do? And unfortunately, I think a lot of people failed that test in the way that they treated others and the way that they responded to certain situations, including myself. And so we need to identify those times when we're in a stressful situation, when we're going through some kind of trial, and make sure that we pass the test, especially if we've already been through something similar before. Just think back to the last time and think, okay, this time I'm going to pass the test. And I'm going to show the Lord that I am trustworthy in the eternities. I am worthy of exaltation because I can handle these situations with Christ's help. I'll lean on Christ and his strength, and I'll get through this. He pointed out a great example of people in Mexico who, many of them basically had been through a lot of trials from things that take place in Mexico. And he said that with the people that he was meeting with, he didn't see anger or resentment or desire for revenge. There was faith and healing and comfort. So these were people that were temperate, even though they were going through horrible things. I think that pretty much covers my notes. Oh, I never thought about this story. I never thought about this before in the story of the man who had his eyesight restored by the Savior with the spit and the dirt that was turned into clay, and it anointed his eyes. Elder Holland, basically, he used the words anoint and being washed, in this way, and specifically in the case of this man with his eyes, and that makes it makes you think about going to the temple and being washed and anointed. And I never made that kind of connection. I'm never going to look at that story the same. I'm so glad that he pointed that out. And I've said before, I think earlier this year, I think that I feel like in my conversations with people, like people realize that there's protection that comes from going to the temple. And most people, I think, associate that with living within your covenants and wearing the temple garment and all that stuff. And that's true. But I think sometimes we don't really think about the initiatory part. And I think that there is actual power in things that are unlocked when you go through that. I really do. I think sometimes you can go through that and be like, oh yeah, this is nice, it's symbolic, and it's no. Sometimes I think it's actually real, and it gives you more strength and the power of God in this life. That's what I think. Okay, let's go back to the chat. Allison Jane says, Mormon chapter 3, verse 19. And I write also unto the remnant of this people, who shall also be judged by the 12 whom Jesus chose in this land, and they shall be judged by the other 12 whom Jesus chose. Let's see. Ruthie Sly says, love the Walk with Jesus channel. Yes. Cabria is great. I've talked with her on the phone, and she's very good. She's a very pure person. I think you'll like her channel. Deborah Hecht says Sister Spinalis was quoting from the 9th article of faith. Yeah, about many things that will yet be revealed through prophets. Right. Yeah. Plaid says his message about temperance was for me, as it is a characteristic I have been studying and working on. It is to temper your passions, appetites, and desires. Yeah, I want to focus more on that too, especially after this general conference, and we really gotta we really have to control ourselves, you guys. We have to live within the bounds that the Lord has set, and follow the commandments, and tame our natural man. Because the natural man is basically just a psychotic psychopath. The natural man is not a good person. The natural man is an enemy to God. And it's designed to survive in this world in a natural man way. And so that's good. But when it comes to having like a higher existence other than just being an animal, so if you want to be something more than just an animal, you have to tame it. You have to put restraints on it. You have to be temperate. Nambusu Zaba says, I can't see the link. Oh, let me try it again. Did you guys see the link in the chat? The link is going to be in the chat. Let me do it one more time. Let me know if you see the link in the chat. Let's see. Subscribe to Walk with Jesus. I'm putting it in there right now. There it is. Let me know if you see it. Excuse me. Janet Manning says, gosh dang it, sorry. Oh wait, hold on. Christina Stanfield says Independence, Missouri. Is that where you're from, Christina? Or are you talking about me? Because that's where I live. Are you also in Independence? If so, that's really cool. Okay, Jenna Manning. I really enjoyed Todd Christofferson. I really enjoyed what D. Todd Christofferson said about really watching for the triggers. Satan will do whatever he can to get in there and try his best to work to try to cause contention. Yeah, we got to watch out for that. A lot of times he has to resort to backdoor methods. Sometimes you might think that you're safe because you're not with the other group. You know, you're talking with friends or family, but he's tricky. He's really tricky. Woodcraft Supply Corner. I don't think we truly understand the power and protection. Otherwise, we would be living much differently, myself included. Yeah, I fully expect probably after this life, we'll be able to look back and see everything, like all the forces and powers and actors that were involved during mortality. In other words, I think we're going to see everything that was going on behind the scenes, and we're probably going to be shocked. Okay, Andy says, I loved how we were able to see the sister in the choir having a moment with tears. I had a moment with her. Heart. Yeah, I saw that too. I saw that too. Let's see. Janet Manning. Did anyone notice that after Holland got them talking, that everything went dark? What was that about? I know that his health is really bad, and I'm kind of wondering what if maybe they were moving him. Um, no, I don't know about that. I personally didn't notice anything. KCL says President Nelson was prophet for 7.7 years. Lots of sevens associated with him. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. I just want to pull this up really quick since you brought it up. Let's go to, let's see, what is it? Prophets, sevens. And here are the new things that I added yesterday. So we have President Nelson, who passed away 7 days before General Conference. He passed away on the 27th of September, and September is the 7th month of the Roman calendar. And then, yeah, he passed away, and I messed this up. This is actually supposed to be 3. I didn't correct that yesterday. So the length of President Nelson's presidency was 2,813 days, and if you divide that by 365, and again, it doesn't really matter if there was a leap year or not. It's still 7.7 years. So 7.7 years, which what are the chances of that? And then his funeral is going to be held on the 7th of October. It's just sorry, all of this right here, this is all undeniable. It's clear that a lot of this was intentional. I don't know how much was, but I think the majority of it was. And then with this section up here, with his passing, I would say that was definitely intentional on the part of the Lord for those of us that are watching. So, again, if we go back to what Elder Holland said, and I feel like this applies to anything that the Lord does, whether it's responding to prayers or giving signs or whatever. He says, so what if things that the Lord does come in plain or in convoluted ways? It may not always be clear what is being done and why, but the Lord is doing something. And I suppose that at least by the end of this life, we'll have a perfect understanding of these things that we're seeing. I tend to think that there's perfect order to what the Lord does. There's patterns and there's things that you can look at, and it just helps you have an understanding that something is happening, that something like this might happen again. It may be a foreshadowing. It may be this, maybe that. I think a lot of you guys are on the same page with me. Plaid says, don't be drunk on bitterness, rage, revenge, hurt, slight, loneliness, pride, greed, self-righteousness, etc. Usually we are rash and impulsive while drunk, quote unquote, on these. Temperance is the alternative. Yeah. That's really good. Being temperate in this, the way that you phrase it, it's like being sober. Like, be sober. Don't, because I guess like when you give in to the natural man, essentially your higher reasoning goes out the window, just like when you're drunk. And, then this like animal of ours, the natural man, it takes over. It doesn't have a mind. It's designed for survival and competition, the survival of the fittest. And that's not the Lord's way. Kay Larson, with the tribute to President Nelson and his upcoming funeral, it feels like we're getting extra sessions of conference. Anyone else feel that way? And if so, what does it mean for the upcoming 6 months? Yeah, there's something. There's definitely something in the air. There's definitely something going on. I think we're in for a very interesting time, for sure. Okay, I'm probably going to go ahead and wrap this up. We've almost okay, gosh, we've almost made it to an hour. So maybe let me just hit up maybe a couple more comments really quick. Mr. Gary Vest says they've put the lights down until they get him moved in his wheelchair. Oh, okay. I guess I didn't really see that or pay attention to it. Um, Let me go to someone I haven't read from. Let's see, Alicia Sorensen. I've come in to all your live streams late, so I'm not sure if you've talked about it, but love how many of the songs have been Second Coming songs. Tuning in from Northwest Washington. Yeah, sorry, I had these tabs pulled up. I don't know that I caught all the Second Coming songs, but we had this one from the new hymnal, number 1051. This day is a good day, Lord. And the scripture, well, one of the scriptures that goes along with it is Isaiah 2, verses 3 through 4. And I want to focus on 4. This is basically a millennial scripture. And he shall judge among the nations and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. So it's a very millennial scripture. It's actually what Community of Christ has over at their temple. They have like in the World Plaza, they have a statue of a guy beating his sword into a plowshare. And I'd say right now, maybe this is one of the themes of this conference is taking our weapons of war, our contention, our arguments, our whatever, and becoming a peaceful, temperate people, the type of people that we need to be for the millennium, because maybe the millennium is going to be here sooner than we think. I sure hope so. And then let me do one more. Ruthie Sly. Let's see. Side note, Jared, you've helped the best people with their channel. No disrespect when I say spin-offs. Everyone you have sponsored gotten better and better, including yourself. Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm all about supporting good, faithful channels, and I definitely feel that way about Cabria because I've known her for all this time. She's going to do good things. And then you have all my other friends that I also support. If you go to the homepage of my channel and go down to featured channels, that's where you'll find them. So yeah, make sure to subscribe to Cabria. Her channel is called Walk with Jesus. She's from Arizona. Okay, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. I don't know yet if I'm going to do a live stream after this last session or if it's just going to be a regular video, but I'll put out something for sure because I'm sure there's going to be a lot to talk about. It'll most likely be a live stream, but we'll see. Don't have your heart set on it. It may not be. But I hope that you enjoy the rest of conference. I hope that we all learn and we all change and we take action on these messages that are being shared. Continue to pray for President Nelson's family and friends. Pray for the church that we'll get through this transition and that we